In part one of this series, we left off with Pedro Lopez being released after a 2-year stint in prison for auto theft. During his stay, Pedro had committed his first 2 known murders, killing the men who raped him in an act of revenge that was officially deemed self-defense. These murders marked a turning point in Pedro's mental and emotional evolution. Combined with the excessive exposure to sexual assault, trauma, and violence that composed the daily life of his childhood, warped with his own inherent evils and inside of a country that was on the brink of collapse, Pedro's decision to act was, in fact, the final ingredient needed to complete the recipe and become one of the most prolific serial killers in history. This is Pedro Lopez Part 2, The Monster Unleashed. I didn't see you there.
Something big is going on here.
From hunting ghosts to Bigfoot,
paranormal, UFOs, true crime, and more.
We won't just be spouting articles.
I was researching for your entertainment.
Beginning of a new world.
The best guac you'll ever fucking eat.
true story.
It's basically like one day you walk outside and you see that the ants are playing with matches.
This is the Black Cat Report. See you on the other side.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 72 of the Black Cat Report. My name is Gil, and joining me this week is the one and only honorary national semi-pro kazoo champion of Culpeper County, Virginia, Joey.
Sweet. I am glad to be here. I turned it up to 30%. My headphones, I turned the mic up to about 70%. We are cooking Thanksgiving turkey right now, and we're about to get some tryptophan. And Pedro Lopez is about to bring the tryptophan.
Oh, Jesus. Yes. And, I'm super stoked. This was going to just be a 2-part series. I'll say it right up top. This is a 3-part series. Once I got to the point that, the script was literally, 2.5 times the size of a normal episode, I was like, I should probably split this up. So That's what we're doing. And I also want to say, too, sorry about the late release this week. We know that we have a bunch of folks that wait on Sunday, and the second we get it uploaded and it's published online, we see the downloads and the plays coming in. So we know that y'all are out there waiting. And just wanted to apologize. To be real with you, it was the week leading up to Thanksgiving. And so Joey and I's work, our jobs are just kind of a little bit crazy. Our hours got super messed up. I pulled at least one all-nighter for my job, in the process. Joey, I don't think has slept in a week. And
Nope.
Our schedules did not mesh up, which is why we were recording 3 hours later in the night than we normally would. That said, definitely try to make it a point to not be late in publishing an episode again, and just wanted to take a second to apologize.
Just know that we love you, and we are sorry for missing this week. And seriously, we literally watch the numbers go up. We're like, oh, we got one. Okay, one download. As soon as it goes, it's 2, 15, 40. And we're just like, oh, that's very, very quick in an hour or two. And we're just like, oh, this is so nice. Thank you guys for listening, and we appreciate it. And we're excited to bring you some new information because we don't just do this research for ourselves. We love to present this stuff. We love to make jokes. We love to we're book nerds in a lot of ways. Me and Gil are math book.
True.
I mean, not really much as math nerds.
No,
we're just book nerds. So we like to sit and read these things, take notes, find stories, and tell stories. So we appreciate you guys listening every week. And and here's part 2. So
part 2. All right. Well, right up top, I want to acknowledge some known discrepancies between how we're covering the story of Pedro Lopez and how others have in the past. You see, if you go on Wikipedia or listen to random podcasts, read through blog posts and articles about Pedro Lopez, they are likely to deviate from some of the events, dates, and stories that we're laying out in this series. This is intentional. As a researcher, I decided to use the 2004 A&E documentary, The Monster of the Andes, Pedro Lopez, as my primary source and reference. I did this for the simple reason that the crew actually went to the regions of South America Pedro was active in and directly interviewed members of the police who worked on his case. members of the local press, family members of his victims, the woman who helped capture him, and Pedro Lopez's own mother. Not to mention, it included lots of rare audio and video interviews with Pedro Lopez himself. Simply put, it's not hearsay, but straight from the source. And if you want to check it out, don't be like me and sign up for a 7-day free trial of Andy. That was not a promo. You can use the link to watch the documentary for free on Dailymotion, a link that I only found after I went deeper into research. But anyways, that'll be in show notes. Always steal your press.
Yes, and if you actually get the free trial, remember to cancel it if you really don't want it, because those 7 days they're not going to tell you. They're just going to be like, "Oh, checked."
Yeah, and I literally have a note in this script saying, make sure to cancel the Andy 7-day free trial, which, because the show got launched late or is getting recorded late, I'm already past the 7 days. I fucked up. I done fucked up. But
yeah,
hey, y'all are worth it. Now, on to the show. It was 1971 and Pedro Lopez had just been released from prison. He was 23 years old. Seemingly without hesitation, Pedro was on the prowl, targeting and stalking the most vulnerable in society, children of the indigenous populations who, just as in many other regions of the world, are neglected, looked down upon, and, in many ways, often despised by the legal systems whose roots still cling to the heritage of colonization. Just as it is here in the U.S., these native communities whose cultures and lifestyles have been systemically torn apart are, in Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador, granted just enough, air quotes, independence, end air quotes, so as to not have the full legal representations and protections given to their more culturally and aesthetically European neighbors. Meaning, native folks are kept just close enough to the system that the government can benefit from them, but just far enough away that the native folks can't fully benefit from the system. Close enough to take, but far enough to never receive. All this adds up and trickles down to social norms for non-native citizens: racism, bigotry, and most importantly, neglect. To the cities and institutions, these native folks are always crying about something, demanding something, always claiming injustice, and what is static added to static but just a louder noise already ignored? So when children began going missing from these native communities, not only did the police brush off and deprioritize the pleas of heartbroken families, but so too did the media. You see, when a community exists in a vacuum, society won't hear its screams. And when that society is the main, if not only, holder of mass communications, e.g., radio stations, newspapers, interagency bulletins, etc., you find yourself in a situation where when one native community began to experience their children go missing, then another native community experienced their children go missing, then another, and so on. They all had little to no way of knowing they were falling prey to a larger pattern, or should I say, a single predator. This formula for ignored and isolated murder is the same used by most serial killers, and often, in my opinion, only when a would-be serial killer ignores this formula and kills someone society does not see as vulnerable, that they then make themselves vulnerable, setting into motion their own capture and leaving them to only be known as a murderer, or preventing them from continuing on and becoming a serial killer. Success means stalking society's shadows. Capture means stalking society's spotlight.
That's a very good metaphor there. Because that's literally how they're all captured, to be fair. They kill the one person, like the police chief's daughter, or usually the white girl, or the white man, or the white boy, or something like that, or somebody's family member that's there, and it's like, oh, now we can do the research. Now you gave us the one thing we needed, motivation, to look into this.
I was literally, while I was working on the script, I was messaging friend of the show and mentor of mine, Laura, over the weekend, and just kind of waxing poetic about Pedro, especially like, look, when you get to the numbers that Pedro got to in terms of victims, right? Like, you really do narrow down the patterns and behaviors of a serial killer, right? Like, there's a huge, huge question immediately, which is, how the hell did he get into the hundreds? Right? Like, that is insane, right?
Yeah, we see like 14 is high, like 14 is like huge, but
yeah, and like, so with that, when you're kind of like researching and studying him and like learning about him, you start to realize like, oh, well, he does this, he does this, he does not do this. And that's what all the folks that get to 10, 12, 15 do. And when you learn about, which will be in part 3, how he got captured, right? Like how he got caught, you see after hundreds of murders, right? And just years of straight up impunity, right? That makes the same fucking mistake that the serial killers that only get to 6, 7, 8, 9 victims get to. Same fucking mistake. So the variables kind of become more extreme, right? And it becomes almost like a broader test for any theories that you have when you're looking at the behaviors and patterns of serial killers with less victim counts, right? And to me, all this kind of just got my head spinning, and I started thinking, and I was like, this might sound weird, but if everybody was as valued as the president, right, there wouldn't be a serial killer in the world, or at least not in the United States.
There wouldn't be at least there wouldn't be more than 5. There'd be more there'd be more spree killers, I would imagine, than actual serial killers.
Yes, but there's a huge difference in that, and it's
for sure.
It's in the process, and so with serial killers specifically, right? They only last as long as they're preying on people in society that society doesn't value.
The lesser thans.
Now, there's a couple things that happen. They might be doing it naturally, right? It's just their natural like inclination. It's their MO. It's their victim type, whatever. Or they, just buy out of convenience, any number of reasons. That's not the point. They're actually a reflection. Their effectiveness is a reflection of society's bigotry. It's a complete reflection, because if they're able to be successful, then that means that they found an entire segment or sector of society where people don't give a fuck if they're going missing, right? If their bodies are piling up, right? And that also means that the institutions and forms of representation, yada, 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 are not reporting on it, right? That mold only gets broken when basically, say, a detective or an officer steps outside of the mold, actually goes against the bias and listens to the sex worker who says, a bunch of folks from this street have gone missing, right? That's when it breaks. Or when the serial killer becomes disillusioned, right? They lose touch with society's bias. When they do that and they kill and they fuck up, or when they actually, kill somebody who meets the stereotype but actually is valued by society. The point is that they cannot exist if society values everyone equally. They can't. Because we would all be freaking the fuck out. Like, oh my God,
I have 2 things to say to that too. Like, one of them being like, it's amazing that we say that detective or police officer that steps out of the steps out and like asks questions
of the
or
role
talks to
of
people.
Yeah.
And you're just like, we call them great detectives instead of like, that's them what they should be doing their job.
They're
that's
not being
job.
racist.
Like the guy who caught Richard Ramirez, Frank Salerno, like he caught 2 serial killers. Granted, he saw things people didn't, and there is part of that.
And the entire police force was making fun of him, giving him pressure, talking shit about him. Like, that's not a trophy for the LAPD. Like, that is not a trophy.
And I think that people love, like, they talk about, like, LAPD was terrible with their handling of most serial killers. They have been awful of everything. Well, yeah, we can go into their civil stuff. But and 2, like, I agree that like it's a society's thing about that, but there have been some serial killers, I feel like, that just got away with it because they didn't search for fame or didn't search for notoriety. It also did have that they were killing some amount of people that were in the I always call what I think that is looked on as like lesser thans, a society part of society that they don't like look at, like police just didn't, like, you know, we look at Ted Bundy. They didn't care the people that were killing him. They didn't care about the people that were getting killed. They literally handed a boy back to him, you know, and was like, "This must be yours," you know, like they gave
Hey,
that.
we
kinda
noticed
up.
the collar. Yeah.
And that happened to serial killers we've talked about. We're just like, can you, like, you see this, but it's a different. Their mindset is different, and it's not a good mindset.
So, like, in order to be effective at anything, doesn't even, you know, not just being a serial killer, just fucking anything, you exploit a systemic vulnerability, right? You find a loophole, right? And the quote unquote like lesser than in society are they become loopholes for these fucking monsters that are out there. And here's the thing too. So to kind of like flip it back, if the serial killer does get immediate and massive notoriety, right, but they still can't catch him, then my first argument would be they found a bias or a fucked up flaw within the police institutions, within the investigation system, right? So like with I want to say it was Ramirez. Even though, like, you know, because it's so dense out there in like California and shit, that it's just like it'd be like 6 or 7 blocks within a neighborhood would be this precinct, and then 6 or 7 blocks would be this precinct and stuff.
He found that flaw.
And nobody wanted to fucking talk to each other, and they all wanted the fame. So it still falls back onto like, or Zodiac Killer, or any of them. And I just, again, looking at the numbers that gets, you know, added up in Pedro Lopez's story, I can't not think, you know, in terms of like the broad hypothesis of like, what are serial killers? I don't think that they're a natural response to society, but I do think that, you know, oftentimes you can't contract a virus from a different animal, right, or a different species. And that's why serial killers in different countries, or specifically in different cultures, look differently, because those different cultures have different systems of values.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And that's what fucking changes it. Right?
Yep.
But I don't know. I had to go off on that, y'all. I've been thinking about it way the fuck too long. It's been so long since we've talked to you guys. We missed you. We missed you so much.
I do want to say, like I had referenced earlier too about that, is like I do think if there wasn't, like, we valued, like you said, everybody like the president. Yeah. We would not have, like, serial killers would probably be caught more quickly. Like,
well, they wouldn't have a chance.
They wouldn't have a chance. But, like, I guess if we're talking serial killers in that way, like, and separating spree killers from serial killers.
Yes.
Because spree killers are completely different. They go straight crazy. Like, they go crazy and kill a bunch of people in a short amount of time. That's very hard to catch. I mean, you'll catch them eventually because it's quick, but, like, they'll still have a decent amount of bodies.
But there's no pattern after.
Yeah, they take, like, a year. You know, they'll take, like, sometimes a year in between, or like a couple months. And so, like, you could feasibly catch somebody after one if you find where they're going to go. You kind of like find, okay, they go to this certain spot, I'm going there.
That's what I'm saying. So you said you could potentially catch somebody after one. That means you were trying to.
For sure.
Right. And like, and that's what I think is, I think there would be a shit ton more based off of like psychopathy, right? Or like the amount of sociopaths that are known to be walking around all the fucking time, right? Like all the fucking time. You know, not all of them become like serial killers, obviously. You know,
well, for
shit
sure.
ton of trouble. You know, most of them just become CEOs and politicians, which they just export the killing. Anyways, but like with the amount of sociopaths that are walking around, and you have to look at a certain percentage of those are going to become murderers, right? Because they're fucking sociopaths. How many of them, based off of whatever the fuck set of variables, kill somebody society values, and so they just go to prison as a murderer, but not as a serial killer? They get caught early, so they don't actually have a chance to bloom into the serial killer they would be, because they killed somebody who society values or was looking at. I don't know. That is just my theory, which I was like reading the amount of like sociopaths that are out there, reading about tendencies behind serial killers, looking at Pedro Lopez, looking at the whole fucking process. And I'm just like, there should be a lot more serial killers based off of all the numbers. But I think that they fuck up, if we can put it in those terms, when they kill people that the society values, which says a lot about us. Anyways, I digress.
Yeah.
By twisted desire or careful intent, Pedro's victims fit neatly into this formula, the one we just ranted about and I read off. And that said, it wasn't always the same exact routine, right? So depending on what Pedro had learned while stalking the little girl, he would customize his manipulation in order to perfectly bait their trust and convince them to go freely with him. Say something to the tune of, "Oh, hello there. I'm sure you've seen me around. I've been trying to get money to travel back home. See, it's my daughter's birthday today, and I finally have enough money. Do you happen to know where the bus station is? Oh, you do. Wait, what? Wow, it's your mother's birthday too?
Aw.
Well, what are you gonna get her? Oh, you don't know. Oh, you don't have enough. Well, let's see. How about we make a deal? You see, I am absolutely terrible with directions, and I really need someone to help guide me there. I know it's just down the street, but would you be able to help me? If you do, I can give you a few bucks that I have extra, and you can use it to get something nice for your mom. A reward for kindness and opportunity to solve a need for the child or the family. Like, this dude's a fucking piece of shit. Like,
I can still think about it, and I'm like, what if it was literally a little group of him when he was younger, and then like there was just one kid that was like, "Oh, it's just no, come over here. It's just around this corner. Just around this corner. Ah, get him, mister. Get his money." And they start like stabbing him with the knives that they had when they were kids. It's just like little hymns, and he's just like, "Oh, I fell to my own kind." Oh no, I got it a southern accent though.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Getting ready to go back to Culpeper. It's coming out, man.
Yeah, it is
fucking
coming
coming out.
Already. It's
Even though-
bleeding out of me.
Is Asheville the same? Asheville's the same latitude. Anyways,
But probably nowhere near. It's fine.
but yeah. So yeah. Once the child took his bait, he would keep playing into their motivations. Whatever the fuck he realized, got the spark in their eye. He would start playing into that, right? Needing them to go, let's say, a little further down the road with him, needing to maybe make a quick detour along the way. Like, hey, are you hungry? I know a great little spot and da-da-da-da-da and this, any fucking thing. But he would just keep coaching them along, breadcrumbs, all the way down with whatever the fuck he recognized as their motivation, slowly bringing them closer and closer to a location he'd already picked out. An abandoned building, a rural stretch of road, or say, underneath a busy bridge. Always a place loud enough or far enough away that no one would hear the hours of screaming about to take place. The 5 to 15 minutes of pure pain and torture. The innocence he took from them. To witness their final moment, stating later how much he loved when he was able to get their eyes to pop out of their head. That's what he needed to see, and why he always made it a point to only ever kill in the daylight, stating later, quote, "I forced the girl to have sex with me and put my hands around her throat. When the sun rose, I strangled her. It was only good if I could see her eyes. I never killed anyone at night. It would have been a waste in the dark. I had to see them in the daylight. There was a divine moment when I put my hands around the girl's neck and watched the light fade from her eyes. Only those who kill know what I mean." End quote. And why not kill in the daylight? According to Pedro, he was helping them. By killing them, they were guaranteed to go to heaven and not face the suffering of this world. Well,
I mean, he's like the opposite of Batman. He only works in the day. Like,
Yes.
he's terrible. Like, the complete opposite of Batman,
dirt
you know?
fucking poor, has no heritage in this city.
Like, he's
is
literally the
crime.
antithesis. Yeah, he's the antithesis of Batman. I mean, the Joker is like the bad guy there. But this guy, if he was in Batman, he would be the literal opposite of Batman.
Yes. And when you just said Joker, it made me kind of like think it's like Joker, evil genius, you know, in our modern fucked up age where it's just like, you know, morals and heroes and anti-heroes and shit, like everything's fucking getting blurred and blended and like Pedro Lopez is horrifying because how do I put this? He's not a genius.
Yeah.
He's average. Like, honestly, like he may have a certain set of like skills that he built up, like you said, like when he was like a child and like learning how to fucking survive and like, you know, adaptability was the only fucking way he could exist when he was 8 years old and in one of the most violent places on the planet, living on the streets, you know, like had to learn to be a fucking like adaptable, right? But other than just kind of, you know, his life skills that he's built up, he's not a fucking genius. He's not. He's probably as equally as intelligent as your neighbor. Actually, there's a good chance your neighbor is Pedro Lopez. Lock your doors. Well, after he'd taken their life, he'd begin his ritual of disposal. Sort of. Starting at the scene of the hours of assault and eventual murder, he would pick up and carry the small body to a spot he'd already prepared nearby. Usually a shallow grave, pit, or ditch where he would haphazardly cover their corpse with minimal effort. And this was the thing about Pedro. He didn't ever want to bury his victims too deep, often only using branches or logs, anything that would conceal the body but keep it accessible to him later. You see, this was important to him for two main reasons. First, he needed to access the same grave again to dump his next victim. Piles upon piles of children's bodies were stacked without ceremony or care, insects and animals regularly finding and scavenging the flesh from their bones. And the second reason, they were his guests for when he had his tea parties. From freshly murdered to months of decay, Pedro would bring the bodies of the little girls out of the mass graves and set them up, lovingly referring to them as his, quote, little dolls. And sometimes when the mood would strike him, he would have his way with the corpses, just like the first night they were together when they were still alive.
Wow. Imagine walking up on that. This is the horrifying thought of this. Him just dressed up as Batman, sitting there, you know, sitting there pouring tea for them. Pouring tea for these dead bodies that are just, it's like horrifying. These poor girls that are getting, you know, raped and murdered. It's so terrible. Like, this is horrifying. But he's just a complete and utter terrible person, and he's just sitting there like setting these people up as dolls, like we kind of talked about in Herbert Baumeister's
fucking rotten corpses. I did think of Baumeister, but yeah
like you think about it though, it's like he did the same thing, kind of like to be closer to his victims. Yeah, with mannequins too, but the
fucking decomposing bodies.
True, that was my
in
theory,
a jungle.
He believed, and maybe like, and he's sitting there just like coming up with little voices for them. He's just like, hey, how are you doing? Yeah, like he's probably doing that. He's probably associating that, like, I mean, anything is probably possible, to be fair, that he's doing at this moment, you know. And to think about that he's like sitting there with these dead bodies. He's probably, you know, they're probably been there for months. Some of them probably were there for months.
Oh,
you know?
yes.
And he's got like 3 or 4, and he's just like looking at them with like one of their faces is falling off, you know, being eaten off. Mm-hmm. And he's just sitting there just like, oh, you look so pretty today. You got something on your face. Like, and he, you know, rubs it. And this is terrible because like, it's horrible. This is so bad.
This is fucked. Yeah. It's fucked.
And he's a necrophiliac too. So like, he literally is like the worst.
Yup. yup. Like,
It's not like they're newly dead. He's like, cool,
No.
4 months later.
well, all right. So I'm gonna touch on this in a second, but like, hey man, like you get to these fucking numbers and like your body count. Sorry to like, knock the victims, but like that's just what it fucking is at that point. That is like there have been wars with less casualties, right?
Yes.
Like you get to these fucking numbers. A, there's a reason why you get there. B, you get efficient,
Yeah. for
and
sure.
like so he wasn't doing this rookie shit of trying to like use a fucking rock axe in his basement and fucking like dig out the floor, hide the body, go to Home Depot, only pay in cash, and like fucking re-cement his basement floor every 3 months because he was trying to hide another. No. Peter didn't have fucking time for that, right?
Yeah.
Like this 350 comes over the course of about 7 years,
Yeah.
right? We're talking like days in between his next victim.
Yeah,
Right.
he's using
It's
his
just
little
going
finger
and
forks,
go-
he's
Going and
using his
going.
little finger in it, fingers, his finger forks,
But, like-
right around the neck. It's free.
Well, okay, I do have a comment on that, but like,
Okay.
but I'm just saying, like, when you're doing it that fucking much, if you go to the gym every day, do you wash and neatly put away in the drawer your gym clothes every fucking? No, you fucking leave them out in a bag. Like
Yep.
you leave them out accessible. That's what he's
100%.
doing with these victims, with these children, right? These little girls. Is he's like, I'm not gonna dig another fucking grave every day. You kidding me? No. I'm gonna dig one pit, right? Dump them in there, dump them in there, dump them in there, and then everybody's just gonna think that there's a new little mound here. They're not gonna know that all the dirt can go back in because there's bodies, right? Like
Yeah.
he just used the same fucking pit. Well, these dumping grounds would sit hidden away between cities, towns, and villages, specifically at a central point for him to work towards as he's carefully crafted the con he would use to deceive the little girls, bring them back to the location of a constantly disturbed rest, right? So he would, between the towns and the villages, in a spot that was, 7 miles from this town, 8 miles from this town, 12 miles from this town, that's where he'd fucking put it, which naturally, if you're going between population centers, the spot in the middle is going to be the least densely populated.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Again, dude, the fucking system and the evil, ness behind this, but it's just like, pick that spot. So some cities he gets on a bus going south, other ones he gets on a bus going east, other ones, but like,
Yeah.
but he goes to the same spot. And once he gets to that area, he's comfortable. He fucking knows that he's safe and does terrible fucking shit that he does. And that's, we'll get to it in part 3, but, things get discovered, right? Like mass
Yeah.
graves, they get discovered,
Well, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
right? But with all that said, right, keep in mind that was his process after killing hundreds of times.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't always a professional pedo. No. Back when he was still just a rookie, right? So when his body count barely passed folks like Jeffrey Dahmer with 17, Ted Bundy with 30, or John Wayne Gacy with 33, right? Way back then, when he was in the minor leagues with lessons to learn from mistakes he'd made along the way. And while we don't have a whole lot of information to go on regarding his early career as a serial killer, with a lot of the information just totally based in hindsight or speculation at best, there is one event that we can confirm, and luckily, it's one of my favorite fucking stories out of this whole goddamn series. So, shortly after Pedro was released from prison, he left Colombia and settled into neighboring Peru, and soon thereafter found a sense of belonging in the city of Ayacucho. A beautiful city surrounded by rainforests and nestled between mountains in central Peru, with a subtropical climate and arid mountains. Ayacucho, its weather at worst only demanded a sweater and an umbrella, right? Super easygoing, excellent fucking place to live for its population of about 200,000 people, the majority of which were poor and native. But the real selling point for Pedro was the culture. When asked later about Peru, he fondly recalled that the little Peruvian girls were, quote, so much more trusting and willing to help than the jaded little girls in Colombia. unquote.
Wow.
And so Pedro was happy and in no time was well on his way to claiming his first 100 victims. But,
Yes.
but unlike Pedro years later, month-long plague leaving only chaos and tears, right? Young Pedro let himself settle down and establish Ayacucho as not only his hunting grounds, but also his home. For a while, life was great, almost like a work-from-home situation, but as news of the number of missing children, all from the same town, all from the same community grew, so too did the locals' awareness, naturally.
Mm-hmm.
As the chaos and rumors settled down into time and patterns, the people of Ayacucho were able to do more than just keep their children safe. They were able to actively make plans to investigate and hunt the monster. And as it turns out, Pedro wasn't hard to catch. When people were actively aware of and looking for a serial killer, he was incredibly easy to spot. And while we don't know all the details of when or how they caught him, like the best I could find is that they set up a sting, basically. A bunch of indigenous folks straight up set up a sting, right? Well,
I do want to say, imagine the person that's like, hey, I think I'll let my kid be the victim. Like, it's just like, we never liked you anyways. It's fine. You're just the second kid. Yeah.
Damn it, Greg. I said keep an eye on her. It was on purpose. I was trying to catch him.
Yes.
Shit. No,
Got it now. Yeah.
But I mean, like, yo, when stakes get that fucking high, again, like, he maybe had, shit, I don't even know at this point. I'm going to assume based off of the years, 15, 20, like, victims at this point. He would get close to 100 by the time he leaves just this one fucking city, which, by the way, the city is about the size of Asheville, right? So, like, bro,
people
like,
will be talking.
70 or 80 people? What the fuck? And they're all, little girls. Like, you're almost wiping out a fucking generation in that town. Like, that's insane, right?
Yep.
Well, anyways, like, at that fucking point, you get the biggest, burliest motherfuckers you can find, and you're like, all right, like, gonna have my daughter out there, because honestly, 27 motherfuckers ready to beat the shit out of somebody, all staring at your daughter waiting for something to happen. She's actually safer in that sting situation than
normal.
Not in a sting situation.
No, I just imagine that they actually put one of the big burly guys in like a little girl's costume and puts him out there.
And they just like stood him underneath a box with a fucking stick and a string. Anyway, no, but like, oh help! I dropped my ice cream. Oh no. I am whatever you're looking for right now. I'm innocent.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know what the fuck they did. But I know that it worked real fucking fast.
Yeah.
So like I was saying, what we do know is that the indigenous people who captured this evil motherfucker had the most perfect plan for how they should dish out justice.
Hey, we were just talking about Batman.
Yeah, no. Yeah, he's about
to
get
in there.
Give some
they're
fucking
getting
justice.
their person. Yep.
No, but like, God, their fucking plan is so good. Anyways, all right, I'm getting stoked here, especially after the fucking shit about how he, what he did with all of his victims. So, keeping that in mind, well, once they had Pedro, and more than likely, rightfully, beat the shit out of him, they dug a pit in the jungle, and with his feet and wrists tied up, they slowly lowered Pedro into it. At that point, they began shoveling the dirt back in, carefully burying him, but just up to his neck so that only his head was exposed. Just inches above the jungle floor, like a little pedo Pedro plant. Next, they poured a sugary honey mixture over him, coating his head from crown to chin, and then they simply planned to wait for the wildlife to slowly pick up on the scent, to wait for curious predators to approach and start sniffing, to wait for Pedro's inevitable screaming as he was stuck watching from the ground level while stinging, biting, and burrowing bugs crawled towards him like a free buffet.
Yes.
That was the plan. For everyone to hear his screams when they fell asleep that night, finally being able to rest easy. But sadly, it was only a plan, because Pedro would be rescued. You wanna guess who rescued Pedro, Joey? Wanna guess? Wasn't Batman.
Superman?
Nope, wasn't Superman.
The police officers?
Nope.
His mother?
No. Jesus.
Jesus.
That's
oh
right.
My God.
Jesus saved
Jesus.
Pedro. No. We're talking white Jesus.
The
Jesus saved Pedro Lopez, and he did it by sending his most powerful ally. You see, little did the locals know this whole fucking time, but watching from the sidelines as they worked for hours to prepare their form of justice was a modest saint hidden in the crowd. A white, middle-aged Christian woman.
Oh my God.
Yup.
The lady from The Blind Side?
Joey, are you looking up Christian white singles in your area? What are you doing?
No.
Oh.
No, so I'm just looking up not Sandra Bullock. Leanne Toogue. No, she didn't do that.
There's a reason why she lives in America now.
Sandra Bullock or
You thought just starting a rumor about Sandra Bullock.
Oh, that's fine.
Well, I'm about to go off on a joke here, but I'm also about to directly read afterwards what people said about this interaction. I'm not that far off. So, after hours of digging, reburying, and everyone staring, some in the crowd felt relief, naturally, right? Others were still mourning their loss. But Saint Karen finally realized that the local punishment for being a pedophilic child murderer who'd killed tens of dozens of the community's children wasn't just making someone dirty and sticky. But in fact, it might actually involve punishment. Well,
No.
let me just say, when she realized this, she was struck by a message from God and compelled to perform what was later to be seen as the first of her saintly miracles.
She yelped that country to
bro.
highly hell.
With her spine straight, head cocked back, finger in the air, and a tone more damning than a Baptist sermon, she flipped the fuck out on everyone there, targeting any random local she assumed was the tribe's manager. Now, I don't have the exact transcript of this event, not technically, but using AI, descriptions of the event, and royalty-free music, I managed to reconstruct everything from the moment of inspiration to the speech she gave to the crowd.
Listen up, you godless savages. Hey! Hey, look over here. Look over here. Hey, yeah. Pretty white lady trying to talk to you. Yeah. Okay. Could you shut up the old people in the back crying? Thank you. Now, I know y'all are upset, but this is not the way you should be handling it. I should know. It might be hard for you to understand right now, but this is all because of me. You see, just moments ago when I started to feel icky about your social need for justice, I realized it wasn't about me being squeamish when I see brown people upset. No, not this time. It was actually the feeling of God testing me, testing my faith in Him. How, you might say? Why, you might ask? Well, as we all know, God works in mysterious ways, and this time, He chose to send this man here to rape and murder your daughter so He could teach me a lesson in forgiveness. Why so extreme? Well, thank you for asking. You see, last year, when I found out my fiancé Jerry was, in fact, not a virgin, but had in fact masturbated 5 years before we met, I was left devastated, torn apart, heartbroken, just like you. Can you imagine that? Finding out the world had done to me exactly what Pedro had done to your kids. And when I freaked out and executed Jerry, then signed up for missionary work in Jamaica, but was sent to the fucking jungle instead, I prayed. God, why would you do this to me? Send me to Peru? For the past 83 hours I've been here, all I could think about was Jesus, Jamaica, and Jerry. The pain consumed me, just like I see it consuming you right now. But killing Pedro won't make things better. Jamaica would have just been a prison of happiness, a comfortable hell where I'd never face the pain Jerry caused me, just the closure of living my life and moving on. That's not what Jesus wants. Without guilt, how would you ever love him? Beg him for relief instead of taking it for yourself? And so I ask of you, no, I command you. In the name of the Lord, set your Jerry free. Let Pedro be my cross to bear. Let me take him to his own Peru. Save you from my harsh lesson and finally be worthy of honest deliverance to Jamaica.
Wow.
Sorry, I just really fucking hate this lady.
Jerry.
Scandalous.
I don't even need to say anything after this. I think that her demeanor says everything for itself.
Yeah, like, I know. That wasn't a direct quote exactly, but this is a quote from Pedro years later. The Indians in Peru had me tied up and buried me in the sand up to my neck when they found out that what I had been doing to their daughters. They had me covered in honey and were going to leave me to be devoured by ants, but an American missionary lady came in her Jeep and promised that she would hand me over to the police.
She's the real Jesus.
So that was Pedro talking about it. There's other people that were at this event that also fucking talked about it, but I just figured I might as well just go straight the fuck to Pedro. Anyways, after all the screaming and the arguing with them that, Jesus stands for forgiveness, that this judgment isn't what Jesus would do, that they need to act in line with the Bible, with the holy teachings, and finally, with the majority white judicial system governing their tribal territory, I swear to God, that is where the fucking conversation went. Look, this lady, if this was her community, I don't think she would have fucking stepped in and said this.
Well, she would have been the first one to be murdering that person.
Bro, like, if this was your town, if this was your neighborhood, if this was your community, you would not feel this way. And honestly, like, nobody on the planet has the right to comment some folks like that, especially just victims in general, and be like, oh, no, you're getting redemption wrong. Like, you're finding justice wrong when it's to this fucking magnitude. Right? Like, this is an indigenous tribe. They don't actually, have a prison system out there, and they've been living in constant fear. And even if they fucking did, the point is that this dude is a monster. Yep. Straight up. Like, undeniably, 100%. He's a fucking monster. And this community, more so than a lot of communities later, while it's happening, this community can confirm and knows that he is a monster as bad as they think he is. Like, it's not just a guess, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, somehow, sadly, St. Karen's verbal assault and pity party story worked. Karen and the community came to an agreement on the condition that if they released him from bug jail, she would personally drive Pedro to the nearest police station and hand him into custody. Pinky promise, Scout's honor. So, beaten, bit, and dirty as a corpse, Pedro got into St. Karen's holy rental Jeep and they set off on a pilgrimage to justice. Now, When asked about the drive with Pedro later, Saint Karen, whose real name I would rather forget, said that for most of the ride, he was quiet and that when he did speak, he was actually pretty nice. And why the fuck wouldn't he be? Even Pedro's crazy ass wasn't dumb enough to strangle the saint that saved him. Besides, she was also like 4 times his preferred age anyways.
Yeah, that's not his MO anyways. Yeah.
No, not even fucking close, but I digress. I also, like, out of everybody in the situation, Pedro had to be the most confused. I will say that. Like, he had to be like,
he's just like,
really? I'm a piece of shit. Like, what the
Yeah,
fuck?
like, I was ready to die. Like, this is part of it. You
Yeah,
know?
I kind of deserve it. So I digress. But her answer, though, like, it really stands out. You know, not just as like a weird factoid of like, wow, you gave a serial killer a ride in a car for a long time. What the fuck was that like? Well, it actually goes to show how far good passenger etiquette can take you in life. In Pedro's case, it took him all the way to the border where she let him out of the car to casually walk out of Peru and start a new life in Ecuador.
Oh my God.
She
like did not do the thing that she promised and said that she was gonna do.
Oh. Yeah. This is what, like, it's what that's why I fucking rip on her so much. She was so fucking disconnected from reality and full of herself, obviously, to do the shit that she just did. Well,
Yeah.
Anyways, after having experienced what can only be described as a miracle, Pedro set forth as a wiser man, ready to start a new life where he could be more sure of himself and more self-righteous than ever as he continued to rape and murder more than 200 little girls in the coming years. And that is how Saint Karen, patron saint of self-righteous delusion, came to be as she then performed her second approved miracle, the smile on her face when she went to bed that night. And that's where we'll pick back up next week as we conclude this series with Pedro Lopez Part 3, Graves of the Monster. In the meantime, we hope everyone out there has a happy and safe Thanksgiving.
Yes. Have a great Thanksgiving. Do not think about Pedro Lopez while you're having Thanksgiving.
Please think about Pedro Lopez while you're having Thanksgiving.
Think about St. Karen.
Y'all are the best. Can't wait to catch you next week. Yeah, stay safe out there. Bye.
Peace.